People of Earth, we have come to upgrade your cosmic consciousness. DNA activation ready. In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome to Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. I'm Lou Quinto.
And I'm Craig Anderson.
Craig, today our special guest is CEO of PCG Digital, Glenn Pasch. And Glenn is also the author of a book called Power of Connected Marketing. He's a keynote speaker, and he's also the host of a podcast called You're in Charge. Now what? And so what we want to do is we want to talk to Glenn about the essential training that's needed for our future leaders. As we've talked before, the pandemic has really highlighted a lot of deficiencies in leadership. And so moving forward, it's important to know what are the competencies that are going to be needed in the next generation of leaders. So let's bring on Glenn. Well, welcome, Glenn Pasch. Good to see you again, Glenn. Craig, just a little background information. As you know, Glenn and I go way back. We were in high school together. And so our paths after 40 years have come together with our businesses. And so, Glenn, you're CEO of PCG Digital. You want to just give us what does PCG Digital do? It's hard to come off.
Sure. Yeah, we are a full service digital marketing firm. We help businesses with their online presence, get their message in front of the right people so they generate more sales opportunities. So we do the marketing, and we also do a lot of leadership and process training with our clients, because what we find is once they market and the phone's ringing or people are interested, sometimes they drop the ball and they don't know how to maximize those. So our responsibility is a little end-to-end solution for businesses.
Cool. Turnkey. Wonderful. Love it. In addition to that, you're also a podcaster, just like Craig and I. You have You're in Charge. Now what? Which when Craig and I were looking at future episodes, we thought what a great opportunity to bring Glenn on to talk to us about leadership training. And Craig and I, just for your background information, we've been doing a lot of reading and everything. And the pandemic has just highlighted some of the deficiencies in leadership. And what we want to do in talking to you from your leadership expertise is to put you in a scenario to start off our conversation. And that has to do with leadership development. If you were put in charge of a company's leadership development program today, and you had to start from scratch and look at future leaders and what they would need to learn, what would be the competencies that you say have to be in the front?
Okay. First and foremost is communication skills, not just writing or verbal, but understanding how, one, you take in communication, and more importantly, how your team, every individual takes in communication or learns a different way. And again, whether it's Myers-Briggs or some sort of communication bucket, to know that you want your stuff ordered quick, get out of here, just tell me what you want to do. Someone else needs a little more explanation. You have to understand that. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is organization. Too many things that come onto a leader's plate that they have to deal with. So how do I stay organized so I don't miss out on meetings or things that I promised someone? So that would be number two. Then tied into that is delegation, how to effectively delegate, get things off your plate and allow someone to be able to be successful and help the team versus micromanaging or thinking you have to do it yourself. And then tied into that, I think, is really explaining what your expectations are, like goal setting or targets, and how do we get there, and explaining the path to get there, what actions we need to get there versus just, hey, focus on the numbers, I don't care, just go get it. And then lastly, it's an overused word. We were sort of talking about it in the pre-show, which is empathy. Now, I don't think empathy means, some people misunderstand, or they think empathy means, oh, I'm going to be easy on my team, or I can't be a high achiever if I have empathy. No, it's not. That means that you just understand what stage some of your people are in. Are they motivated by money? This person's motivated by more time with their family. This person wants to be promoted. This person doesn't want to be promoted. So empathy, to me, just understanding your team on a human level
Right.
so that then you can get the most out of your team.
Okay. See, and Craig and I in a previous episode, we talked about empathy. In fact, we debated it. And Craig's stance was it was part of the toolbox.
Yes.
My stance is that it's not part of the toolbox only, it's part of your being. It's how you act every day. So someone who goes to the toolbox to pull out empathy on Tuesday, when on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday we're authoritarian, that is leading to mixed messaging, which goes back to your communication, which means, wait a minute, who's Glenn today? Is Glenn the empathetic guy, or is he the, get it done now, I, don't want any excuse type of guy? So yeah, in empathy, I think, Craig, what was our final agreement there on empathy?
I think we agreed I was 100% right.
I'm sure. There we go.
Yeah.
As usual.
No, I think we kind of came into somewhere that's, basically where you are, right? That it's an important thing to be good at, but it's not the only thing to be good at to be an effective leader.
Yes, because you could be the most empathetic person, but if you don't know how to communicate, or you don't know how to set goals, or you don't know how to coach and develop your people, or who cares? That just means you understand everything, but nothing gets done. But I agree with you. It should be a wrapping around how you maneuver. It's another piece to you that has to be available to you, as you're saying, at all times. Now, what can happen is, but on the other hand, if I, through empathy, I know, right, that Craig, sometimes I can just go up and go, hey, Craig, enough, get it done.
Right.
And he's okay with that.
Right.
But if I said that to someone else, crumble, 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 right? So you can be a little authoritarian with the right person because you understand that person. And sometimes you need somebody to come up and say, cut the BS, let's get it done. Where, again, knowing your team, that's what I was saying. That to me is empathy, is understanding your team.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes the whole place is on fire and you don't have time to explain it. You just need you to do. So there are those times.
What a great analogy, Craig.
It's better than some of the other ones I had earlier today.
Yeah. Let's go back to the very first one that you talked about, which was communication. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that communication expectations have changed significantly since when I'll just you and I, because we're boomers. Craig's a Gen Xer, and he constantly reminds me that I'm a boomer. But communication, you said it's not just verbal and oral, but the younger generation of leaders communicates differently. What are those differences that you see that you believe would put communication as one of your top competencies to teach?
That's a good question, because a lot of my team in the agency, they're younger, they're in their 20s, early 30s. So when I communicate with them, or when I watch them communicate with each other, it's different. When they're communicating amongst themselves, sometimes there's a shorthand because they understand, phrasing, or they understand that everything needs to be a little shorter or condensed for them. Sometimes when they have to present up to me or someone else, they get nervous because, again, they don't understand what we're looking for, right? So I think sometimes when communication as a leader, you have to understand the audience. You have to understand, again, it goes back to understanding how they learn or what they're looking for. I think I just look at my kids and I just look at this younger generation. Everything is just shorter attention span.
TLDR, right?
It is. And it's literally, to me, it's tell the story, tell it quickly, don't get bogged down in details, right? That should be your starting point. Now, again, I think all of us are heading that way as well. Our attention span, our patience level can you get to the point? I think it's just even more important. But on the flip side, some of the coaching that I do with them is, okay, that's a great place to start, but then how do you storytell out of that? What if I have a question? Where are we going? Sometimes people in general are getting into this, everything's bullet points.
Right.
And that doesn't work.
Yeah, because I know that I work with an individual and with communications with one of my big clients, and she does business writing. And she's always promoting, emails, bullet points. Don't get into long stories, and bullet points are it. But it's almost as if this new generation of leaders has lost the ability to have conversations. In fact, we just did a podcast with another author, and he talked about effective conversations, ineffective conversations, and then missing conversations being the root cause to a lot of leadership issues. And are you finding that? And I'll since you brought your staff up, is there not pick up the phone anymore and just talk to the person, but no, let me send the email or the text message?
Well, I'll put it back on you. No, just think about it, because we have a tendency sometimes to say the younger generation, but just think in your own conversations, you if the phone rings and you look at it, and even if
somebody died,
or you pick it up and you say, you could have texted me this, right? Yeah. So I think it's everybody. I think it's everybody is just utilizing the technology that we have, that we like, because texting's faster, right? Get to the point, send me what you need. So I think we've all evolved in that. I think, again, but I know my kids, it's just my son is going to be, my oldest is going to be 16, the other one's 14. So you think about it and say, they've never been without the internet, right? Yeah. So basically, when they cognitively understood what things were going on, they've always had the iPhone.
Yeah.
Right. And so this idea of calling, my son will not call. He's like, text me. I said, I'll call you when I'm outside. He goes, text me. Just the idea of calling, FaceTime, not so bad, but right. They really like talking over video games. That's when they talk to their friends while they're playing video games on the headsets. But the thought of calling up his friend to schedule time to go, hey, do you want to meet at the park? He's like, why would I call? I'll text. Yeah. So, but we're all getting to that point now where we're literally taking less and less phone calls. I see it from my clients. People don't, calling is one thing, but they're saying, oh, I can chat with you. Great. I can text with you. Great.
Much less do an email. It's even now, I don't want to eat. I'll just text you.
Yeah. Emails are just because, again, they get lengthy. If you're going to send an email, it's basically 2 texts put together. Like that's our mentality. And nobody likes emails anymore. Very few, even my team, where we used to email back and forth, they're G-chatting all day.
Yeah.
So the concept of an email is formal. Okay, I have to send a client the email, or I'm going to send some notes. Other than that, chat with me, G-chat me all day, and we'll get things done.
Right. Yeah. So since we tasked you at the beginning, Glenn, with creating this leadership development program, I maintain we do a lousy job teaching leaders how to be leaders across the board. We just kind of toss people and say, you're a leader now. Go. When we're talking now about kind of this next generation of leaders coming up, how can we course correct that when they also don't want to sit in, with Lou, we were talking earlier about our 8-hour training sessions. None of them are going to sit in an 8-hour training session. So what can we do to help them become more effective leaders where we probably haven't done that as good with our generation?
I think there's 2 things. I think if we sort of break apart that question into 2 pieces. Number one is, you alluded to it. We put the wrong people in the position to begin with. So I don't really care what training you're going to do with them. If I put the wrong person in that position, just because you are a good salesperson does not make you a good sales leader. Just because you are good at a task doesn't mean you're good at teaching it, right? So the first thing I would be doing with whoever's a leader and saying, I have to look at my team and I have to put somebody in charge of this team, is helping them understand who they should be looking for. So I always say, I throw a little exercise out to them and say, okay, here's the thing. Who's your current leader? Lou's the current leader of the team. Lou takes vacation and the team needs a question answered. Who on their team do they go to? I said, because right out the bat, they're approachable. They obviously help them. They know what they're doing. and they get results. I said, that's probably the person I would start leaning into first. Oh, but they're not the best sales. Are you hiring a salesperson or are you hiring somebody to lead the team? So that's, once you get that locked down, then I think it goes back to what we were talking about, how people learn. Some people don't mind the 8-hour because, again, assuming that the 8-hour class is interactive and we're going to role play and do things, so we're just not sitting in class. Nobody likes that. And on the flip side, people say, well, we'll put everything online. But as I see with my son right now going through Zoom school, he's hating it because even if it's modules, after a while you're going, and right. So I think you have to find ways to break it down into digestible chunks. And I think it's not so much the education portion of this, it's the implementation portion that I think we drastically undervalue. They go to your class, 8-hour training, check the box.
Right.
Who's now saying, okay, who's going to help Lou implement what he learned into his job? Who's going to mentor them and check on them? And, so it's little bits and pieces along the way, like a mentorship program. And most people go, oh no, they went to the class. They should know how to do it. They'll figure it out. I'm going, but that's been the problem all the time. We have meetings every day and then everyone goes out and nobody remembers or nobody knows what to do with it. And all you end up doing is saying, well, I told you this. Didn't you remember from this? So I think if I had, the way we do it is we basically have them understand, through some training, here's a module, here's this, read this. And then a lot of it is just piggybacking. If that's the role that you're going to take over, go hang out with the person who's currently doing it. Watch it. I waited tables, and I go back to a restaurant I worked in New York, very upscale. And that's the way they train. Didn't matter. I had waited tables before. They said, I really don't care. Here's how we do it here. And you first followed the person, right? You followed the waiter around and they said, here's what we're going to do. And then they quiz you. Next day you came in, it was like 5 days. Next day they quiz you. And then you'd go look at the food. And then eventually they started asking you, where do we go next? What do we do now? How do we do this? And so they would get your brain. And then they flipped it. And they would say, okay, now where are we going? What are we doing? And they'd watch you. So then they finally said, okay. But I think that's part, if there's one thing every business could do better at, is implementing your education into the people's day-to-day that is you're trying to educate and teach.
I have found a witness. Oh, yes. my biggest thing is that so many people, particularly, and Glenn, you know this as well as I do, Craig and I have discussed this, training for so many companies has fallen under the purview of just the HR person that has to do training in addition to benefits, compensation, employee manuals, onboarding, all that stuff. And oh, by the way, do this training. And it does become just check the box. And we expect, or I wouldn't even say we expect, we just assume that if you sat through that 8-hour training, you know how to do it. But that's
the point, is that HR can do some training on what they're good at, which is policies and PTO and benefits. And here's what happens if this happens. But why would I think an HR person should educate or train someone in a department, pick any other department, sales or marketing? Why would I think that? But to your point is, we bring in consultants. And when you were on my podcast, we talked about that, is they bring you in and they think that's all it is. And you say, well, I should be coming back. Oh, no, that's expensive. We'll just do this. And I'm going, well, then why am I even here? Like, I need to make this work for you. Now, the good thing is it keeps the consultants business world, functioning and needed, because so many people just bring in the training, check the box, we did it, and then it fails. And they go, let's bring in a consultant, check the box, and it fails. But I think to your point is that it's woefully misdirected. Training is not really thought of as really development. See, I even hate the word training.
Yeah.
More coaching and development. And if we have anything, I want to develop my team just like sports teams develop their players. They coach them, professional athletes, the creme de la creme, the 1% of the 1% of the 1% still have coaches, still have people helping them improve performance. But we think an 8-hour session is now going to, they're leaders. I went online and got my leadership course. Yay. It doesn't work.
Yeah. And to go to that, if you or I or Craig come in and do a training program and they say, no, that's all we want, we just want you to do the training program, and then it doesn't meet their or satisfy their expectations that they had in their mind when they hired you, then it goes against us. Is that, well, they came in, they did some training, but it really didn't work. And now we're caught in a catch-22 where it's like, no, we told you there needed to be more. But,
well, I think
again, you can't go back and argue with a Yelp review, basically.
Well, you can present it in a couple ways. You say, this is the way that we do this. Here's my process. You asked me to come in. Here's how I work with businesses.
Right.
We do this, and we do this. And they say, well, I don't want you to keep coming back because the call. Okay, but then I'm still doing Zoom calls. I have to do this over 6 months or else it's not going to be successful. Yeah. No, I don't want to do that. Then you as a business owner have to make a decision to say, well, do I even want this gig?
Right.
Because it
Exactly.
could be up in my face. And you can say, listen, there's going to be tons of trainers out there that will come in and do this. And guess what you're going to do? In 6 months or 3 months, you're going to call me up.
Yeah.
And say,
or
now
text
can
you.
you come in? Right. And you go, why are we even having, but I think that's where you just have to put your foot in the ground and say, this is the way that we work. And we have the success, the results, the clientele to prove that our system works.
Right. Yeah. That's a definite point. I've only done that twice in my career where I've just walked away and said, you need to call someone else, because I'm not going to hang my name associate with this particular endeavor. So, but it's a tough call, as you said.
Oh, listen, it's a tough call because it's revenue.
Right.
I'm not saying that I haven't taken clients afterwards going, I know this is going to be a headache, and they're difficult, but you win them over long term. But other times I've said, I'm not the right fit for you because already in the conversations in the, our interview discussion process of here's what we do, you're telling me what you can't do, or you're telling me that I have to change everything that I do. And I'm going, this is not going to work. And I'll recommend them. I'll say, here's 3 people you should call. I think they'll be a better fit.
Yep. Exactly. What are you laughing at, Craig?
No, I'm just thinking, here's 3 people who do a really crappy job, but it's exactly what you want. So go. But it's true. I think there's a whole lot of people, they see a problem. They're like, well, I want to fix the problem. So I'm going to hire somebody to come in and consult or whatever and check the box. Yep. And then it's, I do a lot with business plans. Like, all right, I'll come help you write the business plan. But if you don't keep me on, that's going to be up on the shelf and you're never going to look at it again. But they will say, but I checked the box. Yeah. And there's so much, especially the bigger corporate that you get, there's so much check the box stuff. I was laughing when you guys were talking about training. I mean, I remember at a Midwest bank that no longer exists, for sales, we were brought into a room where the HR guy, I kid you not, and dating myself, shoves the VHS tape in there of some dude doing this awesome training that I had to sit there and watch on TV with 3 other guys. And that was my sales training. Yeah. Go forth and prosper. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens a lot I work a lot with automotive dealers, and there's a couple sales trainers that are well known. They've made their business and they do great. I mean, their information is really good, but that was the whole thing. You go in and you watch these VHS tapes, and then some will say every day we're going to talk about one thing, and that's a little bit better. But it's really this idea of checking in later on in the day and say, Lou, what did you watch today? I watched Overcoming Objections, or whatever you want to say. Great. How did you use it? What did you learn? Did you use it today? Yes, I did. How did it go? Like that accountability, that you're going to be followed up on. It's an interesting thing. I always say that, as we said, Lou and I went to school together, but if you think of how we were educated, somebody checked up on your homework. You had tests, you had quizzes, there wasn't just, okay, here's your book. We'll assume that you're going to read it and learn, right? There was, and depending on the teacher, Lou probably had some, I had some too. And you said, ooh, you can't not do their homework. Ooh, that's going to be bad, right? Or you knew they're going to check. So if you want to create an environment of accountability and high performance, somebody's there inspecting, not micromanaging. Somebody's watching film, so to speak. So if you're sales, when you're on the phone making your sales calls, or you're doing face to face, where is that leader watching, sitting there going, okay, this is good, this is good, and then coming to you later on saying, great, I watched that would here, these things, keep doing them. This one we got to work on, right? So it is that idea of someone on the sidelines watching you play the game, and then we review it and we practice it, and then we get better at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, Glenn, what we're going to find, and correct me if you think I'm off base here, but not only is it the HR department or whoever's hiring the training's fault, it's the participants going through the training. If they're looking at it as, I just need to check the box, that's not doing anything for my personal development. And as we all know, development and personal development, the company taking interest in your development is actually one of those things that future leaders are looking for in companies, that you are helping me to grow. And so if I'm just told, go to conference room B tomorrow at 8:00 and you've got an 8-hour, seminar, on conflict management, and once you get done, then implement it, then they need to go back and say, what are you doing to help me in addition to this? And so I think participants need to be at fault also for not looking for more, because I got to go back and do work. I got to send emails. I got to make phone calls. I got to do all kinds of stuff. Don't have time to implement it. I check the box.
Well, I think so that's there's couple things in there. One is, I don't think it's just leaders who are looking for that. I think a lot of people now in the workforce, younger, not just old, again, I don't want it to be, oh, these people are different. It's not. It's just they expect someone to be involved in helping them develop, even just do my job better. I may not want to be a leader, but can you just help make my life easier, right? So that my job's easier because now I understand it and I'm getting good at it, and we like doing things we're good at. So I think it's a combination of a few things. One is that type of attitude. So you're right. Leaders of the future have to always be thinking, I have to develop my team. But that's the way successful companies are. Yeah. They develop their staff. But it's not, and you do have to tell them what's in it for them, right? Mm-hmm. That's where understanding your people, it's just going to make your life easier if you go through this training, or it's going to put you in a position to generate more revenue. You get a raise, or you can get a title. Now, again, it's understanding not everybody wants a title, right? I have a couple employees who are like, don't put me in, I don't want to be in charge of people. Right. Yep. I want to be in charge. So it's like, okay, well then they want money, or they want time with their family, or so you have to know, hey, if you keep getting better at this, then you're going to be putting yourselves in a position that we can have that conversation. Yeah. Right. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. So I think it is a lot of changing and developing, because, people need this. And I think we've all gotten better at understanding what good and bad leadership is, and we just, we finally have permission to do that. So we need to do that, because if not, your team's not going to grow. You're going to have turnover all the time, and nobody wants that. You're not going to be a place that people want to go work. And more importantly, if they're dealing with customers, frustrated employees create frustrated customers. So again, I think development should no longer be looked at as tedious. It just is part of your job now as a leader. Right. Penciling it in that I have to go sit with Craig and give him a little feedback today, or I have to watch what's going on, instead of I'm in my desk, and when some emergency comes up, the manager comes around. So then the only time you see me, you're like, oh shit, what did I do wrong? Right. That's not good.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was a big lesson I had as I took over a role, and I move into the office, and I'm the new leader. So everybody wants to walk by and see who I am. But the way the prior leader had the office set up, my back was to the door. Right. I never saw people all day until I reconfigured everything so I could actually see people and start engaging. But it was that whole mindset of, I'm the boss, I'll come out and talk to you. when it's time, and maybe do some seagull management that Lou likes to talk about, with just dropping in and screeching, and that's not what employee, and I think you're right. It's not just, the millennials or whatever the generation is after them. I think everybody now is looking for more direction, more either affirmation or correction, because I think people generally want to succeed, but they want you to help them figure out how to get there.
Yeah. And I do, sometimes when I've gone into companies to help them and they say, oh, my employees, right? Or right there, it's this battle of you against them. And if a team's underperforming, you guys know the same thing. I go right to the managers, or who's in charge of this team. That's where I got to start. It's not them. And a lot of times, you're right, they sit in their desk. I drag their desk and put it out on the floor. I'm like, well, you can't see anything in here. Go out here. Or what I used to do in my company, we had booths. And yeah, I had an office. I had a small one, but I'd go sit out there sometimes. I'd just go work out there, and everybody's, why are you out here? I said, because I want to hear what's going on, or if you
Right.
need something. So I would go work out there. And in the beginning, it made them all nervous until they just went back to work and said, oh, Glenn's over here. And then I use my office for phone calls, or I'd have meetings, but I'd rather be out with the team, because then now it breaks down that idea of I'm more important than you. In reality, I just do different things,
Right.
make the machine move forward.
Right.
And it's not more important. So I think sometimes physically, you can say that all you want. And a lot of people do open door policy. They ain't coming in. You got to go to them, go hang out with them, go sit in the, go move yourself into a cube or whatever it is nowadays, different, or work out on the floor a little bit more. I think that shows them that you're part of them, and you truly then can see what's going on. And then you have more time to what you were saying, Craig, about affirmation. If I see the people doing things correctly, I challenged the other day I was talking to, I said, I think it was in, it was a leader. I was saying, here's what you should do. Today, I want you to say to yourself in the morning, I'm going to find 20 opportunities to tell my team that they're doing something good today. 20. That's what I want you to do. 20. And not just, hey, good job.
Nice tie.
What specifically did they do correctly? And he, I talked to him after that. And he said, first off, I thought it was going to be hard. He said, but actually by lunch, I had 20 things. He goes, but I never thought about it actively looking to compliment. He said, it changed my day completely. I looked for positives, not just negatives.
Yep. And it did, one of the things too is what's that show, Undercover Bosses? Aside from my cry in every episode at the end because of something that the boss does to somebody who really needs, the concept of undercover bosses is something that every leader really needs to consider what's going on here. And that is that the boss is going into the workflow and dealing with the day-to-day issues that everyone on the front line is having. And if you sit in that office or sit behind that desk and you don't get out there with your people, you still have that mindset of the past, the way things used to be, or why you implemented this in the first place. But things have changed, and things are constantly changing. And everybody needs to be just like that show. They need to be the undercover boss every now and then, and they need to roll up their sleeves, go wait tables, go, stock shelves in the warehouse, clean the floors, clean the waste paper baskets, but associate with people and see what's going on and see what they're doing. I think that's a next level of leadership training that really needs to be constant, not just once a year, but it needs to be constant. I'm going to take a week and I'm going to go travel with a salesperson, or I'm going to go on and work on the floor for an entire week. And that's what I'm going to do so that I can make myself aware of the changes that are going on that helps me to continue to learn and grow. And I'm not giving you advice and delegating things or helping you organize based upon an old mindset that I have. I think a lot of leaders would find that so much better in how they're going to be leading their people in the future. So just my opinion.
No, I think you're right. What happens is, well, I've been, one of the things I've been doing this past, couple months is I jump on our every month we have strategy calls with our clients to say, here's your results, here's what we're working on.
Yeah.
And for a while, somebody else was doing it, but I started jumping back on. Why? Because I wanted to hear, then I can make suggestions to say, here's how we could improve, because everybody, if the more you're in it all the time, sometimes you stop hearing it or seeing it and you need a new set of eyes. But to your point, I think what happens is I remember traveling around I was overseeing a few different customer service teams. And I remember someone turned around and said to me, because I came in and I said, why aren't we doing X? Because I had put it in place.
Yeah.
And he turned to me and he says, well, Glenn, that may sound good in your ivory tower at corporate, but down here, it doesn't work. And I always remembered that, because what happens is, and again, especially it's easier if you're like me, I have 40 employees and it's easy to walk out and see and be in touch. But if you're, Craig, you were saying, if you're in a corporate big company, or you're in a corporate and you have all these regional or remote locations, or even just floor to floor, and I don't go down to the floor because I'm on this floor, it sounds good in the boardroom, sounds good on the whiteboard. In theory, it all sounds great. But to your point, Lou, if you don't get out there to see actually what's happening, and then get feedback and say, okay, you guys are using this. And so I use that now. I'll say, listen, it sounds good in my head. Try it. Now I want to hear feedback, and you'll get real feedback from them and say, we should try this, change this, tweak this. Great. Now they feel empowered that they're part of the solution. Number two, they feel that they can actually say that to me and I'm not going to get mad because it was my idea. Like, I really could care less. Are our clients being taken care of? I don't care who has the idea. But that came from years of just me working in kitchens where everybody had to work together, or waiting tables. Everybody had to get together. It doesn't work if you think you're always right. It just, so I think to your point is, the more that they can get out there, the more that they build it as part of their responsibility to go watch the game being played that you set up, then I agree with you. I think it's so important. And people want to feel, because the younger generation has the ability, they've been encouraged to talk. Yeah. Not us, not so much. It was a little seen and not heard, right? These people are like, they'll tell you everything on their mind. So, might as well use that to make your company better.
Right. Well, I'm looking at the time here, and I thought of another question, but I think it's going to take us into another episode, and that would be, what competencies shouldn't we be teaching to leaders? But we're going to have to keep that for maybe another return visit with Glenn. So before we wrap up, though, Glenn, every time Craig and I, we like to do just key takeaways of what we've gathered from the time that we spent together, just to recap for our listeners and viewers on what they may have missed or what we thought was important. So, Craig, why don't you kick off first?
Sure.
What's your key takeaway?
Well, for me, I think it goes back to what you talked about being out in the thick of things. That was something really important to me when I was leading my business, is you have to be out there in front of the employees. If you're just sitting in your office, you're not going to know what's going on. And it's the best way to stay in touch with the frontline employees, because then you'll actually know what's happening in the company.
Right. Yeah.
Blue?
Yeah. My key takeaway is simply, leadership training has to go from a check the box to a true development curriculum, where there is mentoring or coaching that follows after the classroom training, and even on the job training, to see that what people have learned has been implemented, not just for good leaders, but for good return on investment also of individuals' time and obviously company money for the training. So, Glenn, key takeaway from our time together.
So I think all of it, I think we have a tendency, businesses have a tendency to still live in that check the box, because they think this other thing is too much, or it's too, not even cost wise, because they'll buy the training. It's more, well, I have to change my whole habits. But I think of it, just listening to your takeaway right there, Lou, I think of a doctor. You go for a checkup and they say, here's things that you got to fix. And guess what? You go back in 6 months and they say, did you fix this? Or depending how serious it is, you have these accountability things to do. So if you're going to hire a company to come in, there should be a checklist. Like, here's your health report.
Yeah.
And here's the solutions that we're going to put. And then we're going to check in 2 months, and we're going to check in 4 months, right? Or else you don't know if you're getting better, right? If you went to the doctor once and never went back again, the only thing you're going to do is think, oh, I feel good, and you could have something really going wrong, right? So I think that to me is this breaking down how much leaders think it's going to take of their time, when if they just reallocated some of their time to this, they're probably half doing it. They just don't realize it. But if they could just twist it up a little bit, I think they'll get more out of their team.
They need to be intentional
Yes.
in doing it. Yes.
Perfect.
And constant. So, all right. Well, Glenn, we appreciate you spending time with us today. For our viewers and listeners, how can they get in touch with you?
A few ways, very simple on social media. It's Glenn Pasch with 2 N's. Everywhere. LinkedIn is usually one of the best places, LinkedIn or Twitter. As Lou said, I have a podcast that's out every single week called, You're in Charge, Now What? And then I also am on Clubhouse. If anybody's on the new Clubhouse app, I'm around there hosting a couple rooms, but LinkedIn's pretty much the easiest way to find me.
Okay,
Excellent.
terrific. Again, Glenn, appreciate you being with us, and hopefully we'll get you back for that or that last question that I had, which is, what shouldn't we be training future leaders? So
That's a whole episode. Yes.
that is. All right, Glenn, take care.
Glenn.
Appreciate it.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much for having me, guys.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, Lou, that was a great interview with Glenn. I picked up a lot of tips that I know I can share with my clients as we start talking about how to improve their leadership. What'd you think?
Well, the one good thing I'm glad you didn't pick up is any stories about what I was like in high school, but that's beside the point.
I'll just say I survived a whole 45 minutes with 2 guys from Jersey, and I have come out unscathed. So,
but yeah, no, it's always good to see Glenn, and he's definitely a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate him being on the show with us.
absolutely. Well, thank you all for watching this episode of Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. You can find all of our past episodes on QAleadership.com. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn to catch all of our latest episodes, which always air on Thursdays at 9:30 Eastern. Also, we are on your favorite podcasting platforms if you'd rather not watch us and just listen to us on your drive to wherever it is you drive to these days. So until next time, I'm Craig Anderson.
And keep your hands washed. Keep your distance. I'm Lou Quinto.